The Great Demon Lord and the Children of Olympus by Sea of Mountains. Chapter 6. Is it bad if it disappears? Many tired demigods milled around and about in the camp. The night before was a tiring and rather stressful one. The disappearance of 4 demigods and the possible disappearance of another one. Well, Annabeth was fine now though. Fine except for the fact that her energy was drained to the point that she could barely move even after she slept until the sun was high up in the middle of the sky. What the hell did that circle do? Does it need energy as compensation for communication? Or is it more like a gate, though? If it were a gate, how much energy would it need? The thoughts in Annabeth's head started traveling round and round. Even if she couldn't move her body, her brain was working just fine. But, unfortunately for Annabeth, the door of the cabin creaked and Malcolm came walking in with a meal, disrupting Annabeth's thoughts. "Hey, are you able to get up? I have your lunch," Malcolm stated. "Ah, thanks Malcolm. I'll be up in a sec," Annabeth responded. Malcolm looked doubtful as he set the tray onto the table near Annabeth's bed. The sheets rustled as Annabeth tried to force her arms to move. She collapsed after a pang of pain traveled through her entire body. It felt like she had done intensive training the day before, every muscle was sore. So it doesn't just affect my awakeness, it also affects my muscles, like I have been straining them. Are you sure you don't need any help getting up? Or one of the Apollo cabin kids to heal you up? Malcolm fretted a bit. Her train of thought cut. Annabeth suddenly came back to reality and replied, "No, I appear to be simply sore to the point where I cannot move. It's nothing too big." Malcolm seemed only half reassured but left Annabeth to her own anyway. As Malcolm left the cabin, Annabeth concluded that he most likely went to get Chiron even though she told him to not worry. For the meantime, Annabeth decided to have some much-needed food as she reached for the food tray by her bedside. And sure enough, a couple minutes later, creak. The cabin door opened once again with Chiron in his wheelchair followed by Malcolm and a few other demigods from various other cabins. "So, could you possibly tell us about what you experienced in more detail?" Chiron asked as he motioned for Malcolm and the other half-bloods to exit the cabin. "Yes." Annabeth looked up from the food tray on her lap. "When I stepped onto the middle of the circle, it started to drain my energy. Both physically and mentally, which is the reason why I fell asleep and why I am sore all over right now." So it seems that is the compensation needed. Like the Iris messaging system but with energy instead of drachmas, Chiron commented. Annabeth nodded then continued, "As soon as it started to drain my energy, this strange fog started appearing until I couldn't see any of you guys. That was why I panicked a bit." Everyone else saw you quite clearly though." Chiron recalled what had happened. "Is that so?" Annabeth asked but continued on anyway. "After everything was covered by the mist, I saw this vision like the I am, but I could see everything on the other side. Behind me, in front, below and on top. It was a very real place, just definitely not a place on Earth, neither Olympus nor the underworld too." Chiron slowly continued to compile the information that Annabeth gave with the information they already had. "So, what was this room like?" Chiron asked the question that would have most likely been answered next even if he did not ask. The room was rectangular in shape with stone walls, ceiling and floor. I could not hear the other side nor smell. It was only limited to sight. I think that may have something to do with the amount of energy I had, but that would take a massive amount of energy if one were to use the circle to travel to the other side. No, not just travel. Even communicating would need more energy than what I have. How ridiculous. How much energy do the ones on the other side have? Annabeth slowly fell down a rabbit hole of theories while recalling what happened. "Annabeth, please get back on track," Chiron urged, "though, that is an interesting idea. Still, continue with what happened first before we talk about possibilities." Sorry Chiron." Annabeth snapped back to reality. There were desks and papers everywhere with foreign writing. It is possible that it may be a world with magic like in those fictional novels. But before that, the first thing I noticed was 3 figures or people in the room. Noticing Annabeth hesitated as she said, "People," Chiron questioned what she saw but knew that she was going to elaborate on it anyway, so he kept silent. Annabeth then continued, answering the unasked questions Chiron had. One of the figures wore a worn black cloak. They also had a silver mask and long hair of the same color. The most surprising thing was that they had articulated joints like a doll, so I concluded that it was a golem or automaton of some sort, but I think I might need more research on that. I could just be a body that was possessed by something for all I know, as it could move quite freely. Chiron, now sipping from a bottle of barley tea, nodded and contemplated what Annabeth said before gesturing for her to continue. The second was a dark-skinned man with blonde hair. He seemed pretty much human except for his eyes. They were gold, I think, with slitted pupils like a snake's. The last one was only a couple inches tall, with wings. 2 pairs of transparent wings like a fairy's. Do you know of any monsters or spirits that sound familiar? The man could be something similar to the Gorgons, but I know a large number of different monsters, but not one hat quite fits the description. As for the fairy, do you mean a daimon? Chiron started filing through his memories for anything that fit Annabeth's description of the figures. Ah, Annabeth noted, that is true. She did look like a daimon, but she was too small to be one. Her wings also more resembled a dragonfly's rather than a butterfly's. That's interesting, so it does seem like another world. The most curious person would be the golem then. Chiron arranged all the new information in his head. There is the possibility that it could be an automaton but also a possessed doll. Chiron turned from his tea to look at Annabeth again. Did you have any sort of interaction with these people? Yes, Annabeth nodded. The first one who noticed me was the golem. It looked nervous maybe. It also pointed to the floor where I realized they had a similar circle there too, confirming that it was a gate or portal of some sort. It seemed to not know what to do and panicked, then decided to tell the man and the fairy. From the looks of their surprised and excited reactions from seeing me, I guessed that they were most likely experimenting. Another possibility that the papers and drawings in the room presented, I guess. They did not appear to have any ill intentions, as they avidly showed me various objects from their room. Most of the objects were strange contraptions which I had no idea of what they did, but among them was something that resembled a phone. Annabeth stopped there to let Chiron have a moment to take in all the information that was just said. A phone? It is possible that that world has developed in a similar way as ours did. Chiron offered his opinion, but the fact that it could be a world of magic might contradict that. The possibility that those with magic may eventually depend too much on it is one thing, but phones too. Similar ones at that. Yes, so, if it is the possibility that they were experimenting, could the disappearance of Percy, Will and the Stoll twins be related? As far as I know, they were not in the room and none of the three made any suggestions about the demigods. It was like they did not know about it. That or they were good actors. I wasn't able to see any more as I had used up all of my energy at that point. As the fog dispersed, the man and fairy seemed disappointed in seeing me leave, but that could just be a hallucination. With your story, it seems like continuing to keep an eye on the circle, or rather portal, would be a good idea. Chiron finished the rest of his tea before turning around and pushing himself towards the doorway. Remember to rest before you do any strenuous activities. We can make do with the others guarding it. Relax until you aren't sore anymore. We were all very stressed last night. He gave Annabeth a kind smile, then opened the door and left Annabeth to her own thoughts. The day passed by slowly, the weariness from the night before gradually disappearing, the jovial atmosphere returning back to the camp. Well, only for a little while before a meeting with the heads of each cabin was called late afternoon. Annabeth had already been up and about for some time before the meeting, albeit a bit slow. She had already predicted that it would be about what to do with the circle after night fell. It was possible that, even if unintentional, more demigods could disappear while watching. Carefully making her way to the big house, Annabeth fantasized about what the other side of the portal was like. Maybe they made elaborate stone tunnels and labyrinths, or maybe it was something similar to the Greeks' architecture with a multitude of buildings like the Parthenon. Annabeth continued to allow herself to indulge in such dreams before snapping back to reality as she neared the entrance to the big house. So you're saying that we are going to risk the possibility of losing more half-bloods even after we've confirmed that it will not do any harm? An almost earth-shaking shout came from inside that was followed by a slap, most likely with the table as the victim. Quiet down, Clarice, that is not the way a head of a cabin should ask. Yeah, go ahead and ignore my opinions. If any more half-bloods disappear tonight, all of you will have to start showing some true respect. You got that? Another slam on the poor table. Annabeth sighed internally. Yup, that was Clarice, a hot-headed, brawn-for-brains Aries half-blood who could sometimes give out decently useful commentaries that weren't insults. Saltier than the god of the seas and oceans could be an accurate way to describe her. Annabeth gingerly opened the door, a preventative measure for any stray flying objects. "Ah, Annabeth, you're here," Chiron said, internally sighing a breath of relief. "So, what are your opinions on this?" TCH. Of course, ignoring the Aries girl and asking the Athena girl. Like she'd know much about war tactics. Clarice scoffed, still mad about the rejection of her idea from earlier. Assuming that those four are safe, how would they get back should be the question. Also the question of how they got there in the first place. If the circle needed such an amount of energy just to communicate, how much energy is needed for teleportation and how does it activate? We need to consider these. Annabeth made her way to her seat, ignoring a fuming Clarice along the way. Annabeth continued as she sat down, supposing that those four did get to the other world, that means no harm. It is possible that we could try to contact them again tonight. Those are good points, Annabeth, but we just leave it be for the rest of the night. Chiron nodded as various murmurs were heard from the others there. Mr. D, what do you think of it? Annabeth suddenly turned towards the portly man in the corner. There is still a small chance that some of the people on the other side could be hostile. Although, I doubt they'd willingly show us their technology or whatever it was, Dionysus replied. As for the guarding at night, I think we can lower the number to 3 as we have confirmed that the possibility of the other side being non-hostile is larger than the possibility of them being aggressive. All people present in the room nodded at Dionysus, logical conclusion. Lowering the number would also prevent less half-bloods from disappearing. Chiron mused, all right, at 12 tonight we will have someone along with Annabeth step onto the circle. Annabeth because she is the only who has experienced this before. Chiron most likely added the last part on to stop extra questions from the other half-bloods. Meeting dismissed, Chiron sighed heavily as he pinched the bridge of his nose waiting for all of the demigods to leave. Dionysus stepped out of the showdown corner holding yet another can of cola as everyone including Annabeth left. A tired Chiron turned towards the wine god. So how do you think we will compensate for the lost demigods in terms of defenses during this time? Will they even be able to return? I am not quite sure I will be able to continue this calm facade of mine. All of the problems dammed up in the back of Chiron's mind started pouring out. HMPH, Dionysus gave Chiron a slightly sympathetic look. See here, even if I did have my godly powers and status right now I would still be as confused as you are. The two looked out the window as the sun gradually crept closer towards the horizon. Until finally, the hours passed and the sun completely disappeared. Midnight to be exact. Everyone gathered at the arena to watch Annabeth try and contact the other side of the portal once again. There were two major differences tonight though. 1. Chris Rodriguez accompanied Annabeth onto the circle and 2. Neither of them wore a harness nor equipped any weapons. Other than the head counselor of each cabin, none of the other half-bloods knew why they were going without weapons and started a fuss which Chiron was able to promptly quiet down. Silence. The centaur commanded. We have decided that those on the other side are benevolent and the disappearance is possibly an accident. We will see what we can do about bringing them back. All demigods either sat back down or silenced themselves immediately with Chiron's short explanation. Such is the power of a camp counselor. Nearing the center, Annabeth felt the familiar draining sensation in mist fill up her view, though this time with Chris beside her. The vision of the same room projected onto the mist again, but this time, the fairy and man were sitting there, watching the circle on their side, waiting for Annabeth to appear again. The fairy nervously played with her fingers while the man seemed to shake uncontrollably as Annabeth came into view. The fairy cautiously held up a piece of paper with writing on it. Upon closer inspection, Annabeth realized it was written in English with neat lettering to boot. Before pondering about how they knew English, Annabeth and Chris nodded at each other and began to read the letter, knowing that their time with the portal was limited. Hello dear demigod, reading this, please do not be alarmed, the ones named Will Solace, Travis and Connor Stoll are in this world and are safe. If you have any questions about this portal and if your demigods will be able to return, do not worry. In a few days' time we will bring all of your people back. We are currently making sure that there were no others who were transported here. By the way, It's the fault of the two holding this letter, please excuse us. Ruler of the Rimuru Tempest Federation, Rimuru, a ruler. Finishing the letter, Annabeth looked up in curiosity towards the fairy, who then sat back down to reveal the silver automaton, followed by Will, Travis and Connor. Annabeth inwardly sighed as Will waved and thanked the three figures with a bow before noticing something was off. Someone was still missing. Where is Percy? Annabeth panicked then, to Chris' surprise, ran back towards Chiron's direction, pulling Chris away from the projection of the two sad people. Excited to tell Chiron about the good news, Annabeth immediately ran up to the centaur and was about to speak when an enraged shout echoed through the camp. Pollux! Dionysus' voice rang through everyone's ears. Pollux disappeared. Dionysus, please calm down, Chiron urged. We have already concluded that the possibility that they are benevolent is larger than the possibility of them being harmful. Besides, Annabeth here seems to have some important news for us. Chiron motioned for the near-breathless Annabeth to speak. They will return in a couple of days and are definitely safe. I even saw them. But, Annabeth's voice cracked, Percy was not there. TCH, alright, I suppose I should put in a piece of information I have seen, as you have given a logical answer, Dionysus muttered, still fuming and anxious about the disappearance of his son. So, recently, I have been contacted by a certain god who has said that the clue to finding Jorgensen is, and I quote, a boy with one shoe, who is with a satyr whose name starts with H something, Dionysus said before returning to a dark corner of a column and opening yet another can of cola. Chiron, give me the green light. Let me go look for them. It was Annabeth's turn to suddenly shout at the tired Chiron now. No, Chiron instantly rebutted. We will wait until the disappearances stop and everyone is back. With the disappearances of tonight, we are already understaffed as it is. If we want to keep defending this camp, then we will have to keep constant vigilance, with or without this circle. Chiron's order rang throughout the thick and dark atmosphere, despite nearly everyone holding a torch. A few had wanted to report just before Chiron placed his decision, but now, they knew better than to cause a riot. The night slowly morphed into a morning. Not a clear, refreshing one, but one with a tension in the air that you could cut. The next 2 days passed in a similar way. The once boisterous mood of the camp completely disappeared. The sound of a pin dropping could now echo through the camp, crisp and clear like a tolling bell. Partly because the gradual disappearance of many demigods, but also from the fear while guarding the camp. Fear that they might be the next one who was taken, or fear that the camp could be attacked right then and there when everyone was at their weakest. Until on the very day that marked a week of the circle's appearance, it disappeared. The limited amount of panic that ensued was nothing like the day a week ago. Finally, a couple hours later, it came back and glowing brighter than ever before.